This is an unprecedented study that we're going to be talking about. We know of no other published analysis looking across multiple metropolitan areas to determine to what extent people on probation and parole are driving arrest activity. And looking at all adult arrests in these 4 metropolitan areas, we found that about 22%, 1 in 5 adult arrests was somebody who was on probation or parole at the time of supervision. Here is where we actually disaggregated the arrests, and we found that whereas 1 in 6 violent arrests involved someone on probation and parole, 1 in 3 drug arrests involved somebody on probation or parole. So really important to disaggregate further that arrest picture. Over this 3.5-year time period, overall arrests declined 18%. What about arrest rates for probationers? Well, arrest rates for probationers declined 26%, so a steeper decline than what we saw in terms of overall adult arrests. What about the decline in arrests for parolees? A 61% drop in arrest rates for parolees over that same time period. We found that the highest rearrest rates were among those people who were assessed at high risk of reoffense, the lowest rearrest rates among the people with the lowest risk scores. So that tells us that the risk assessment instrument was quite helpful and indicative of what was happening with the parolees. Risk assessment tools are something that are being used across the country, being used here in California, and certainly something we see as a key tool going forward.
Recognizing the report's findings, we still believe this is an important element of our overall process of reducing crime and protecting the community in terms of ensuring accountability, working with individuals on probation and parole in terms of hoping that and working to allow them to get those services necessary so that they can reintegrate back into the community, back into society.
These resources are being reduced, and they're being reduced across the board. We have to make sure that what we have available to us can be as impactful as we can make it. And one of the areas here is that we need to look at this information and take it back to our own shops and figure out how we're going to do business, what part of what we're doing today we will continue to do, and what parts we're going to do differently. I'm talking about using this data and data that I hope that we will continue to develop in the future so that when people are coming out of an institution, whether it's a local jail or a prison, part of the deal that was structured early on will take into consideration that these people are going to come back to our community and that we apply the right level of supervision in order to reduce recidivism.
During this same time period, arrests involving individuals on probation fell by 26%, nearly 50% faster decline than the total average. And this wasn't by chance, because we reduced in a single year 6,000 probation violators going to state prison. So we know the science and we know that the approach works.
Most people would have stated before this report came out that parolees and probationers were the primary cause of crime in the communities. At least for these 4 cities, that doesn't turn out to be the case. Although it does inform us in other areas. It informs us of the importance of having validated risk assessment tools, which is very important. You'll also see the parole population arrests go down, and you may think, well, that's a fluke or that's unusual. It's really not. The California Department of Corrections began to use validated risk assessment tools coupled with a program called the Parole Violator Decision-Making Instrument. Because as the Assistant Chief so succinctly said, is you cannot use a jail bed for every problem you have.
We need to continue with looking at the data. We have a great benchmark for realignment. Let's use the benchmark, now study what happens post-realignment to find out in basic real time what's successful in California and what needs help. Where are we failing and how do we fix those problems? And lastly, we need statewide capacity. These are 4 jurisdictions, ranging in size from 75,000 up into the close to 4 million people in the region. So how do we universalize this across all 58 counties, big and small, so that California basically is leading the way for the rest of the country in dealing with data such as this problems with this?